Hey guys, Anthony here, and today I want to talk about the part two of learning how to hear God, learning how to hear God better, how to be led by His Spirit. Basically, in this video, I want to talk about this last maybe 2 years from 2023 and 2024, how God made me go through a time where He wanted me to prioritize learning how to hear Him better, and many opportunities, two courses actually, that I went through when it came to practice. It was the first actually courses on the prophetic, learning how to hear God, how to give words, and what's a prophet, the gift of prophecy, and all that. It was the first time that I went through a course like this, and basically it was in 2023, and also a time at my church at the time, my community, where I had time to practice inner healing and practicing my gift of discerning spirits and hearing from God. Practice the gift of healing too, but also for other people to get clarity on maybe things that they had, how to help them be delivered from spirits, basically casting out spirits and stuff like this. But basically a program that required, I went training through it, but required the gift really learning how to hear from God clearly. And all these opportunities is basically a time where I knew that was an element that God wanted me to work on. And as I step one step after the other, there were many different opportunities that opened themselves up. Basically, it's the idea that if you want to get better, it's you just need to practice. Find time to repeat practice and opportunities, putting yourself in a situation where you learn how to hear God, or you can give prophetic words to other people. And kind of throwing yourself in that fire, learning how to trust God, that trust the Father, that He wants to lead you, that if you ask Him for bread, He's not going to give you snake. So yeah, learning for God, being led by Spirit is important, because a lot of time I feel like we've confused being led by the Spirit and being led by Scripture, or what we think God is telling us, our assumptions about God. But as you learn how to let His inflow fill you up better, fill you up more, in a sense, sometimes He might tell you things that might go against your pre-existing thoughts about God, what you've been taught about Him, other people. When you get this personal connection, and might open path, open a clearer path, a clearer discernment to your destiny, where He's going to learn, He's going to guide you and learn you and teach you things about yourself that's going to align you more closely to your destiny, to who you were built. This is personal connection that necessarily teach you things about yourself that other people cannot necessarily see, since He's your maker. And it's also important when we want to obey God, because one word that is interesting to know, it's about the word Shema. It's a Hebrew word which means hear, to hear, but not only to hear, but to obey. They're one and the same, as if hearing God and obeying Him are one and the same. If we want to do one, obeying God, it's required for us to hear what He's telling us in a situation, right? Now remember, there was a strong prophetic voice in the church that I used to be, where he would tell us, examples of in the past when he grew up, to preach the gospels, was knocking at doors and stuff like that, one after the other, and it wasn't really efficient. But when he grew up about the prophetic, learning how to hear God, learning how to hear God for a specific word for a person that touched them, their situation, knowing things about them that they hadn't told to anybody else. Now we start to see fruit, right? And when he was at work at his break, God would tell him, "Oh, tell this person this," and he would do so, right? Sometimes just interrupted his lunch break, and he would be obedient, and then he would see fruits. And how when we try to come up often with our own strategies, and then God's leading, how I've realized in my own life where there was a faster growth, a faster alignment with the people who would be part of my destiny, more clarity on who I am and what I was meant to do on this world. So yeah, that's why hearing God is important. And so yeah, the training that I so the different trainings that I went through in these last 2 years since 2020, since 2023. There was a prophetic accelerator, which was a 4-day training that was done by Apostle Tomi Arayomi and Prophet Emma Stark. The reason why I went to that prophetic accelerator is because I had received a word from God, which actually was just an image of a certain. I saw an image of a rocket as I was always in time of prayer, and then I asked Holy Spirit, "Well, what are you telling? What's the interpretation of that image?" I didn't actually get an answer just then, but 2 days later, as I was searching the internet on YouTube, I saw a video of Prophet Tomi Arayomi. He talks about where the thumbnail had the very same rocket that I saw, and he was talking about actually prophetic accelerator 4-day intensive course on the prophetic that he will be doing with Emma Stark, but it was in Texas. I live up there in Canada, Quebec, and so I was like, oh, okay, I understood. God was telling me it was time He wanted me to go there. And the thing was, at first it was like $500, and I was like, oh, this, I don't know if it fits in my budget, but luckily the price went down to $279. Like, okay, that's a bit better, but still it wouldn't fit, right? And I had to buy also the plane ticket, and that was the lodging and all of that. And I was like, oh, how am I going to do that? But I knew that God wanted me to go, so I was in prayer and asking, clarity, what's the strategy here? And as I was praying, actually I looked up kind of the tickets for the plane, aller retour, and then I saw the price. I was like, ouch, it was kind of limit. And as I was praying, God, okay, what's the strategy here? I could see I saw a sentence in the screen of my imagination, just a sentence pop up, say, buy it now. And I was like, buy it now? And I saw the price again. And then as I was, kind of arguing, hesitating, and being sure, not being sure, are you sure, Lord? Then I kind of refreshed the page, or the page refreshed, and then the price went up by $20. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop showing. I just bought the plane ticket. And it's kind of a principle that I came out of this understanding that sometimes when God tells us to do something like now, and then we stall, often the cost of doing it later is often greater than if we had just listened and did it now. That's a small free bit for all of you guys. So yeah, I bought the ticket, and then, well, you see, at the time I was kind of part of a mastermind when it comes to, because I understood that the idea of wealth, being a millionaire, was kind of part of my destiny that God was pushing me towards. So he also led me to a certain mastermind where there were people talking about business, growing business, wealth, another metaphysical topic, mindset and stuff like this. And so I kind of shared to them that I had God led me to buy the ticket and to go to Texas for that time, and I wanted actually to ask any of them if they knew maybe if they knew somebody over there or something, maybe find some lodging, or if they knew a good place, a good hotel or something, that could help me out. And then one of the people in the group talked to me after our meeting. And that lady, she told me that actually she had received a dream that I kind of gave, because I gave the address of where the meeting was going to be, the conference. The lady came to me and she told me, I kind of had a dream that somebody, God told her that there was a doctor that, and I think it was making a reference to the fivefold ministry teacher, teacher/doctor. And there was a teacher that was going to come and live in her house for a while. And then when I told her that, then it came up to her when I was talking about going to that place in Texas, because she's lived in Texas, and she realized that the conference was not too far away from her home. And I kind of told her the date, and she said that during that time she was actually away from her house. And she said basically that, oh yeah, you can actually here, you can have my house for that week, and then you can even, and I was like, what? And yeah, and I can I even bought some food, so the fridge is full, so you can, serve yourself, make yourself food. And I also have, and plus she also said I can also leave the keys for you, you can use my car. So basically I was like, wait, time a second, time out. So you know, she said I could have her car, live in her house for the week, and even eat some of her food. And I would only need to refill the gas afterwards. And I was like, okay, that takes care of lodging, transportation, and food all in one shot. And just how crazy it was that God was arranging things. I listened to him, and then he, at the same time, he was giving a dream to another people. And that's also when I got kind of the confirmation that one of my out of the fivefold ministries, apostle, prophet, teacher, pastor, and dear God, apostle, prophet, teacher, pastor, apostle, prophet, teacher, pastor. Evangelist. That's where he kind of confirmed through another person that I was to function in the as a teacher. So yeah, that's just a small thing, but basically yeah. And so I went, did my, at the time I went over there at the conference. I had a house for a week, and I went to the 40 conference and stuff, and things were going great. But yeah, we had the 40 conference and we had time to practice. Thing is, I felt like there was much more time was given to teaching or preaching stuff, and less time given to the actual practice, something that I like less. But still, we had this little notebook where prophetic accelerator, where we had time to write some notes and stuff, and little exercises. Because one of the exercises I liked doing, it was we didn't simply ask God for a word for other people. Sometimes we'd get put in groups of 5, and then we'd go each turn one after the other, 2 by 2, or we'd give a word to one each. And then this is when I noticed little things like sometimes it takes time to get into the flow. The first word would not be exact, but the one after that, sometimes they'd get more and more accurate. And one time I gave a word to a girl that says that I felt like she needed to keep writing books, that she was in a time of perfectioning by God, going through the fire, but she would need to keep writing books. And it blessed her because she had actually wrote a book already, but it didn't do well, and she was asking God, what should I do? Should I stop? Should I keep going? So I had the chance to bless other people and grow in confidence and practice my prophetic gift. And then you had also times where we had to practice, asking God for a word, but about something when it came to the past of the person, their present and their future. So there were different exercises that kind of stretch us, and it was really nice. It was really growing experience. Thing is, when I came back at the end of the conference, it was kind of really hard on my budget, and it actually didn't fit at all. But as I was on the plane to come back, heading to the airport, I kind of had a sudden, message on my bank that said that I had I had a government check that went in, a surprise government check. I didn't really know where it came from, and it was exactly, the price that I paid for not only the plane ticket but also the conference, as if it had been fully reimbursed. And I was like, bro, bless God. And you notice this little winks by God that says, almost like he was paying for it in a way. So I went back, and it was interesting because at that time I would receive words from my youth group when I was in church, and I had the chance to practice some of those things that these exercises with them, and seeing how they would also get some words and for other people or images, and it was really surprising how it made me realize that I wish that when I started as a born again, was I was born again as a believer, if I could have someone that at the moment, at the start, already teach me all those things. When we were in the conference, they said that there was somebody that asked a question, when should we start teaching the new converts about these? And she said, as soon as they're born again, because when it comes to, again, Shema, obeying God, it requires the ability to hear. And then later that year, in 2023, I think, in our church, we started doing a lot of inner healing. There were actually people that were chosen. I was chosen by my pastor as one of the maybe I think it was 50 people who would be practicing, who would go through training by somebody who was in another church who was good at doing that had already a ministry of doing inner healing, and they would train us. Then we would go, and at first we would start doing it during the year. We'd start doing inner healing. Our pastor had people invited from not only our church, but sometimes even referred to other churches, and they would come, and we would have people with problems, and then we would go through soul issues, because sometimes the enemy kind of throws darts and arrows at people's hearts, and it kind of fixes them in a state of life where they keep repeating the same mistakes. And it's kind of learning how to hear God, how they dislodge maybe it's mental these mindsets, lying mindsets, lies about God, lies about themselves, things that they went through that caused trauma, and and just helping their soul heal. And so this process required hearing from God, a lot of hearing, a lot of learning how to be led by the Spirit. Where do we go? Where are you taking them, Lord? Helping the other people, tell them what did they see. And sometimes people would it's impressive again how people, even sometimes unbelievers, but believers who would see Yeshua, they'd see vision, they'd see God taking them to a house that represented their soul and taking old things away and giving them gifts to replace, and a whole lot of really nice magical stuff that was happening. You could see people sometimes have just things that they would see or hear, it would bring them to tears. And all of these were through the process of, it required in teams of two with that person, we would just get from God and kind of go through the process of being led. It's kind of like getting used to following Yeshua, where we would let Yeshua guide the thing with the other person, and we go one step to the other, to the other, to the other. And it was an exercise for me and learning not only to hear God, but letting Him lead the other person, and just being kind of being here to help guide the process. And eventually we were put in teams of two, not with the pastor, but me and another person who had gone through the training. And we go through with people from our church, or sometimes we would get, when the pastor would get too many people, he would refer some to us, and we'd go through that process. And something that people would tell me, I would either hear from the pastor or other people, how they would notice how I was sharp prophetically. And it was nice receiving outside information, how they would see my prophetic skill and seeing my growth through that time. It was really interesting, because I remember like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I would see other people, I had never taken the time to practice hearing God or practice that skill really. And I would see other people give prophetic words, and it was like they were like on the mountains, like, oh, I wish I could do that too. And it was like far away. And then realizing I was at that point where maybe other people were seeing me do it and being, impressed, like, hey, that's really cool. And some people saying, I wish I could see as much as you do. And realized, like, it's incredible how much just the practice of it, and saying, you could simply ask God, I want to grow, and I want you to give me opportunities, and choosing your own volition to take opportunities to practice on other people. Just the door that it opens Yeah, and it's not like this mystery land where it's impossible for you. It's like it's only the man of God that could know. It's like it's accessible for everyone. And so yeah, so after that, in 2024, we had it started at the end of 2023 up until what, about mid 2023 to mid 2024, right? We had something that was called Emerging Prophet. It was a program in Quebec where there was a prophet that actually was a couple that was apostle and a prophet that organized this wedding program where they would actually invite once a week. It was a year-long program where we had modules and courses and teachings, and we have an app and a website where we would need to go through courses. It was like an online course, and it was we had homework and stuff, and to give away, and in time, and courses, teachings to watch, lessons to watch each time during the month. And it was like really this intensive course, and it pushed us again, and it made we had even a booklet manual where we had would teach us about the prophetic, the gift of prophetic, the office of prophet, and different things. And what it did, it kind of immersed us in our church. We kind of sent this group of maybe 15 people over there, and it kind of immersed me in this community of prophetic. And it, when you want to grow up in a dimension of life, put yourself in places where there are the people who are going into the same direction, or even better than you. And it kind of nurtured this atmosphere, and it was great, because I felt myself grow again, and there was even more practice, more abilities to practice. And at church also, we take time as our prophetic group to after church, or we would do little sessions, just giving prophetic words to each other, one after the other. It was a great time, and it would touch people and get directions, and it would bring liberation and encouragement, the amount of encouragement that it gives. And when I noticed the time from before, after that, and before in my life as a believer at the beginning, how it could be completely different, the amount of growth, the amount of accuracy, the amount of a direction I could have got from God, encouragement from others, if that aspect of this prophetic culture was there in churches, in all churches. If it was there, how much we would grow in our spirituality faster, how much we would impact others, how much we wouldn't waste time planning, doing all sorts of things that we think is good, but God isn't not necessarily telling us to do. There was one time I remember, even our church had a plan to do something, and me and a few others, we kind of heard something similar from God, which was, it was like God saying, okay, it's not really what he was playing for us, but it wasn't not necessarily what he was playing for the church, but we can do it if we want to. And understanding that there are things that we do that really takes a lot of our time, energy, but God is telling, it's not gonna bear that much fruit. We could focus more on something that alignment, learning about alignment. There are things that are profitable, there are things that are good, there are things that are okay, but yeah. So yeah, this video is probably gonna be longer than I thought, because it's really it's hard to explain in words actually, but when you live it out and you taste and see for yourself, like it shifts your mind. There's something inside of you that shifts, that grows. There's like a seed that grows, and you become a different person in your ability. Because I even had to test prophetic words for other people that aren't Christian, whether it's friends or family members. And that one time, there was a time with friends, I gave a word, and sometimes I wish it might not have been as accurate as I thought it would be, or as impactful, but I know that it still touched one of my friends, where it was just a word about God saying that he liked an aspect of their character. Sometimes it's not a big thing, but it's just this loving word where when somebody knows that God is watching them. And there was another word though with my parents, where I'd invited them. They came to my town to visit me, and at the end, when we're at the restaurant, I gave them a prophetic word, and I talked to them. Basically, I took the time to listen, and I had this strong impression that they were doing something. There was something that we were planning. And then when I talked to them, I described what it was that they were doing, that we were planning. And then they were just like looking at me, then looking at each other. And they were looking at me, and I was like, wow, how did you know? And they actually confirmed it, that they were actually planning on doing this thing. They had a project that they hadn't told to anybody. And I just straight out went and opened it and gave them and told them, yo, that's actually what you're doing. And they were like, whoa, okay, what's going on? And then they were like, well, I'm gonna remember this moment for my whole life. Just seeing when that God has an eye on a project that you're doing, that he actually cared, that he's actually there. That's kind of part of this gospel. In scripture, when it says that the non-believers that came to their community, that they would get prophetic words, and that they would be impressed by the things that they hear. Or when Yeshua would speak about the woman at the well and told her things about her life that she hadn't said to anybody. And learning that when you practice, I was seeing myself stepping into those shoes, stepping into my own Christhood in a sense, as a son of God, starting to walk at growing. Ultimately, I don't have the same curse as Yeshua right now, but knowing that there's the possibility of growing, it's like a mind shift, and you realize that you're actually doing kingdom work on the earth. So yeah, that's something that I encourage you guys to practice. Ask God, take a friend, family member, and just try it on them. Tell them you're trying something, and you'd be impressed by the results. Another time it was actually fun, because it was something that I received from my brother, which he also had on his own side. He's not a believer, but he also had on his own side a certain revelation of. So it was learning, God still speaks to believers, non-believers, to everyone who's willing to listen. And so it was basically about him moving to a country and him eventually finding a wife there. And when I told him that, he kind of answered that, yeah, actually, there was a time, because we were on a trip, during that trip where there was a time during the trip where I kind of got this inside this revelation about what you just told me. And that was, kind of this two-way confirmation. And as you try and give words to other people, it's learning to trust God, that you have actually, imagine if I never said it, if I was scared, what if I get it wrong? What if I get it wrong? But trusting really that we have gifts inside of us, gold, and we need to share blessings that we cannot keep for ourselves. And when we actually step out in faith, you'll see a lot of time the Father actually meet us on the other side. And maybe something a bit more that's a bit pressure on you guys, but there are maybe here people who actually have a strong belief that they're being called for something, whether it's one of the fivefold: apostle, prophet, teacher, evangelist, something, but they don't feel like they're anointed enough, or they're not the man of God, or ready enough for stuff, anything, and they know that God has told them, but they're like keeping it inside. There's actually something that prophetic voice in a lady in our church, that she had a time when before she was also really sharp prophetically, and she knew she was called to be a prophet, and that when it was time to step into her calling, it was actually at a church. She was fine just being on the side, and not being, she was being humble, being on the side, and not doing much, right? Just praising God. But then, she felt this burning desire, this sensation that she needed to go forward and speak a word to somebody, But she didn't do it. But she still felt that strong desire. She knew that she had to step forward and say something, but she didn't do it. She was under fear, feeling inadequate. But then there was, I think it was somebody, one of the leaders at her church. That wasn't far in the past. One of the leaders at her church, she took the mic and she said that, I feel like God has some, or I think it was, no, it was somebody else in the assembly that came to her and told her that she knew that God had a word for her, had a word that she put inside of her, that she was supposed to tell somebody, and that she told her clearly that if she didn't say it, then she was going to take it and give it to somebody. She was going to take that gift and give it to somebody else. That she was going to take that word and even her calling and just give it to somebody else. And this idea that sometimes God calls us to a certain dimension, that if we don't step inside of it, we hold it back. Well, it's like we say we refuse to do it, and He might give it over to somebody else who's willing. So I want to do this encouragement to not hide behind fear and doubt. And if there's doubt about, or there's been a failure to hear God in the past, or there's anything that covers you with fear, it's time to practice. How much are you willing to practice for it and grow in it? If there's a skill issue, you need to practice. There's a requirement. I think we cannot hide behind fear, but there's a requirement to grow in confidence and maturity. It's part of growing up, because we cannot hold back the gift, because the heaven on earth is supposed to manifest through us. We are the temple of God. The line between heaven and earth manifesting is us. We're the portal. And if we cut the water, then we can keep expecting God to change the world, change other people, but maybe He wants to do it through us and we're not letting it. So yeah, it's kind of this encouragement to push, maybe throw you on the edge toward the cliff, so you throw yourself into the fire and be willing to learn and fail and learn and grow and succeed. But ultimately to really believe that God is good, that He'll lead you, that He will do it, that you see those miraculous encounters, that you should believe that you have a good Father, that if you ask Him for bread, He won't give you a snake. So yeah, that's pretty much all for the message today. And so that's pretty much all for the message today. So tell you guys peace and have a good day. So that's pretty much all for the message today. Thank you. If you want to leave a comment or share maybe one of your own experiences, your success, failures, and encourage each other in the comments below. All right, peace.